This is by far the most requested video I have ever made. I have already received over 200 comments under part 1 asking for this. So here it is, part 2. If you haven't watched it, part 1 was basically the prequel. Everything that led up to me actually turning my body and my life around right as I was turning 40. I'll link part 1 at the end of this video so you can watch it after this one. But before we continue, I'm going to do a quick recap of part 1 so you have the context. I've also added chapters in case you want to skip straight to part 2 section. Alright, here we go. In my early 20s, my metabolism was like a furnace. I could eat anything, as much as I wanted, and I was still lean. That gave me this illusion that I have those never getting fat genes. I was very active, doing sports and walking a lot, but I never touched weights. As soon as I discovered bodybuilding, I quickly gained muscle. In my mid-20s, I looked fantastic. Most of what I learned back then came from bodybuilding.com. Split training, training to failure, eating 6 meals a day, sweet potatoes, oatmeal, chicken breasts, rice, broccoli, egg whites, low-fat yogurt, pre and post workouts, all of it. And it all worked for me, until my late 20s. As I was turning 30, the stubborn belly fat and love handles showed up. I thought it was an inevitable part of getting older and I couldn't get rid of them naturally, but I was wrong. The story of my 30s was basically me trying to burn that fat by working out more. I tried everything: cardio, weights, high-intensity training, kickboxing, whatever I could think of. And still none of it worked. And it wasn't just that. I was constantly getting injured. I would recover, then push myself to the limit again, and then I'd get another injury somewhere else. It was like the injury was a creature having a life of its own, circling my body. Shoulder, back, leg, neck, left to right, top to bottom. My recovery was still pretty fast back then, so I kept pushing. But I was chasing a mirage. Every time I felt like I was getting close to that dream physique, the one that I had a decade earlier, another injury and pain would show up and pull me back. And the cycle continued like that for over a decade. I also tried calorie and macro counting, and like I explained in detail in part 1, it didn't work for me. Around 2016, I discovered intermittent fasting and keto, but even then, I couldn't stick with them long enough to see results. I even tried multi-day fasting, but every time I broke the fast, I'd binge right after. So I was chasing that elite physique, but the more I chased it, the more it slipped away. And to make matters worse, I was surrounded by an unsupportive environment. Everyone around me was overweight and nobody was even remotely fit. Every time I lost even a little weight, I got criticized and judged, even called sick. As I was about to turn 40, I hit rock bottom. An unhappy, overworked, overstressed, overweight corporate employee. And then, to add insult to injury, literally, I got a serious left shoulder injury, plus knee pain. So training was off table. And that's when I started numbing myself with more food, constant snacking, and alcohol. Strangely, no amount of eating ever satisfied me. I'd binge on biscuits and chocolate milk, and an hour later, I wanted more. In the final months before I turned 40, other health issues started showing up too. Low testosterone, my skin aging fast, hair loss and graying accelerating, teeth and gum pain, low energy, poor sleep, stress, and anxiety. It got to the point where even basic daily tasks started feeling hard. Getting up from the couch, climbing stairs, even just washing myself, something that would never even cross my mind before, was now something I was actually noticing. Then I made multiple attempts to control my weight as it kept rising fast. I tried healthy eating. It didn't work. Then keto. That didn't work either. Then intermittent fasting. Still unsuccessful. Each time I would lose a bit of weight at first, then I would gain it back. And some more. Long story short, in March 2024, I hit my highest weight. 177.5 pounds or 80.5 kilograms at around 30% body fat. For context, I'm 5'6" or 167 centimeters. My confidence was at the lowest point of my life, and I was farther than ever from that peak physique I had in my 20s. In my head, the good old times were gone, never to return. And that's where I left off in part 1, with one burning question. How did I turn the page? What happened that changed everything? How did I flip the switch? Now let's answer that in this video. I'm going to take you through the entire journey, step by step, with what I ate, how I trained, and what I did at each stage. I'll also share what I learned along the way, combining real experience with the science behind it. And I'll talk about how I reversed some signs of aging, including hair loss and graying, at least to a degree. I've listed the supplements I take in the description, and if time allows, I'll go deeper on them later in the video. Quickly before we jump into part 2, the actual weight loss and muscle gain transformation. As I mentioned in part 1, I also have a free giveaway. If you're subscribed, like this video, and leave a comment, I'll send you the early draft of my upcoming book, The Big Leap Fasting Method. Once we hit 30,000 subscribers, hopefully soon, I'll reply to your comment with the link. I'll keep it up for 1 week after we hit 30k. I've also put together a bundle that includes my diet and exercise plans, my comprehensive weight loss planner, and my automated accountability and weight tracker, with charts and graphs so you can easily track your progress. If you need more of my help personally, you can reach out for coaching. I also do group coaching in my community Big Leap Arena. The link is below. Alright, now the rest of the story, the turning point. How I flipped the switch. It was a Saturday night, and as usual, I was drunk out of my mind. I texted someone I shouldn't have. Her reply was harsh. I'm not gonna get into that here, but it crushed my ego. Looking back now, being out of shape, being average, being mediocre, not living up to my own standards or my potential played a huge role in my self-esteem issues. And I've learned since then, one of the easiest and fastest ways to get your self-esteem back is to get in shape. An aesthetic physique gives you a level of confidence that's hard to explain. I knew it back then, and now that I'm on the other side, I can confirm it with even more certainty. I'm not gonna lie, at first, dating was a motivating factor, but it was much more than that. I've never been someone who accepts defeat without giving it my best shot, and deep down, I knew I hadn't done that yet. Up to that point, I kind of wanted it. I kind of wanted to get fit and healthy, but not with my whole heart. I wasn't 100% committed. But this time was different, and I could feel it. I had had it, I was done. There's no way in hell I was going to live the rest of my life like that. And that's when the switch flipped in my brain. The old nagging questions of, what if this happens? What if that happens? Went quiet. Only one question took over. What if I don't do this now? The answer was obvious, but I'll let you decide for yourself or comment below. Every transformation, before it manifests in reality, starts in the mind. That was the biggest lesson I learned. Your physical reality is the manifestation of your dominant thoughts. This time, it was all or nothing for me. Either I did it or there was no other option. I felt like a warrior going to war, not knowing if I would ever return. I was frustrated with myself to the core, and just one day I snapped out of it and changed the course of my life forever. The next day, I saw a photo of an influencer on Instagram, and it reminded me of how I used to look like when I was younger. I took it as a sign from the universe. Then I created an AI version of myself just to see what I'd look like if I get fit again. And something about seeing that image hit me. It gave me the motivation I needed. I remember thinking, if I get even halfway there, I'll be happy. And the irony is, now I look even better than that AI image that was supposed to be my ideal version. At the time, it was early March 2024. A couple of my coworkers were Muslim and they were fasting for Ramadan. I saw that as another sign, like, okay, it's time to start for real. So I used it as leverage. I told them I would fast with them. And honestly, being part of a community was going to help me. And they were happy too. So I did it. For weight loss, no religious intent. And that's how it all began. Day 1 of my transformation was 12th of March 2024. And my weight was 177.5 pounds or 80.5 kilograms. Because of the injuries and pain, I wasn't very active at first. Although I walked whenever I could. And there was another reason I kept my activity lower in the beginning. This was already hard on its own, and I needed time to adapt. I couldn't pile on too much at once, or I would risk burning out, or even get hungrier during the day. Now as for the fasting, instead of doing it the usual way, with 2 meals, I chose to eat once per day to maximize fat loss. So I would wake up at around 5 a.m., drink water, go back to sleep, and then I wouldn't eat or drink until sunset. So essentially it was a dry fast for about 15 hours and a 23-hour fast overall, with a 1-hour eating window. The first few days were easy. I was full of motivation and optimism. But by the second week, I was struggling. The smell of food everywhere, everyone eating around me, it was driving me crazy. I was crying inside. But the way I looked at it was this. How come? I have all this body fat, and most of it isn't even visible. It's visceral, and yet I'm still hungry all the time, terrified of starvation, terrified of passing out. It didn't make sense to me, but I also knew one thing. I had to do those 29 days properly, no matter what. The only scenario where I would break the fast was if I actually passed out. And I didn't pass out, quite the opposite. By week 3, I was full of energy. My mental clarity was higher than ever. I was fully adapted to the lifestyle. And hunger wasn't bothering me anymore, because I knew what it meant. Hunger meant my fat cells were getting depleted, and they were basically screaming for a refill. So instead of suffering, I started seeing hunger as a gift, as a signal that fat was actually being melted. I changed the meaning of hunger from suffering to success, and I started looking at it differently. Hunger wasn't starvation. It was my body's way of asking for comfort, that quick hit of feeling good, like an addict. And big transformations are never comfortable. If it was easy, every 40 or 50-year-old would be walking around in perfect health, with a body like an athlete. Once I accepted that, the rest got easier. Here's what I ate and drank during the first 29 days. During the fast, I didn't eat or drink anything. It was a 23-hour fast. 15 hours of that was a dry fast, followed by a 1-hour eating window at 8 p.m. right after sunset. As for my meal, I kept it simple and clean. I cut out all junk food, processed foods, refined sugar, and highly refined industrial oils like canola. I ate red meat, poultry, egg, rice, pasta, some bread, fresh fruit, salad with a bit of extra virgin olive oil and sea salt, dairy and nuts. And sometimes I would add a bit of honey or maple syrup to fruit juice. I didn't count calories or macros. I ate until I was full, without trying to restrict my macronutrients. Fasting seriously for the first time was already hard. I couldn't make it harder than it needed to be. And honestly, my main goal was this. Even more than losing weight, it was to complete those 29 days. I needed that win. I couldn't afford to fail again. Week 4 was even better than week 3. More energy and less hunger. I still wasn't very active physically, but I did try to walk more. My body needed more time to heal from chronic inflammation before I would add in more activity. Fasting is actually one of the best ways to lower inflammation. And hormonally, especially testosterone, and I'm saying this based on the symptoms. The first 3 weeks actually felt worse than before I started, but by week 4, it felt back to baseline. And after that, it climbed to levels I hadn't felt in years. As for the weight I lost, in the first month, I went from 177.5 pounds, 80.5 kilograms, at roughly 30% body fat, down to 166.5 or 75.5 kilos, a total loss of 11 pounds or 5 kilograms. My original goal was 154 pounds or 70 kilograms, and I thought I would be shredded at that weight. But I was way off in my estimation, more on that later. But after finishing those 29 days of OMAD fasting and seeing the progress, I knew I was on the right path. I felt confident I would keep losing and hit my goal weight soon. 32 days into my journey, I gave myself a break. I drank and ate freely with my coworkers. The next day, I got right back into it and decided I would keep doing 1 meal a day fasting until I hit my goal weight. The only difference this time was I dropped the dry fasting part. I also started drinking black coffee, black tea, and green tea again. And I noticed something fast. Caffeine hits way harder when you're fasting. It also helps with appetite. And occasionally I'd have 0-calorie drinks too, like zero sugar energy drinks or Coke Zero. Day 39. Another change I made was with my meals. I cut grains, bread, rice, pasta down to minimum without completely eliminating them at first. On day 60 of my journey, I got down to 159 pounds or 72 kilograms, a total loss of 18.5 pounds, 8.5 kilograms. I was only 5 pounds or 2 kilograms away from my goal weight of 154 pounds or 70 kilograms. But by that point, the pace had slowed down. 2 more weeks passed and the scale barely moved. That was my first real stall, my first plateau. I knew I had to change something, and by then, I was fully used to fasting, so I could push it further. Here's what I did. I couldn't just eat less, because then I would stay hungry. I needed a way to eat more food, feel full, and cut calories without sacrificing micronutrients. That's why I chose keto. And since I had already cut most of the carbs, dropping sweet fruits wasn't all that hard. I still kept berries, just in smaller amounts. And anytime I missed sweetness, I would use zero-calorie drink mixes, or cordials as we call them here. As for alcohol, it wasn't off the table just yet, but I was smart about it. I drank maximum once a week before mealtime, and I chose zero-carb beers. That way I could still feel the effects while drinking as little as possible. And amazingly, by then, roughly 2 months into my journey, my left knee started feeling better. So I started walking around 7,000 steps a day, which is roughly 3 miles or 5 kilometers. I attribute the improvement in my knee to 3 things. Less inflammation from fasting and better nutrition, less body fat, which also means less inflammation, and finally, less pressure on the joints. You might think 20 pounds, 9 kilograms isn't that much less pressure. But it's not just the weight itself. When you lose excess fat, your whole biomechanics change. Looking back at my videos when I was at my heaviest, I was walking like a penguin, with no grace. And human joints aren't built to move like penguins or ducks. A lot of people passionately hate keto, and I've never understood why. I'm not going to get into the science here. I'm not even defending keto. But for me, keto simply worked. Keeping carbs lower meant lower insulin most of the time. And that made it easier for my body to tap into stored fat and easier for me to control appetite. And nutritionally, you're not missing something magical just because carbs are lower. They're essential amino acids and essential fats, which your body needs. But there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate in the same way. You can get what you need from protein, fat, and nutrient-dense foods. And if you do it properly, you can cover your bases. I also avoided anything keto branded in the supermarket because once you read the labels, you realize most of it isn't actually keto. And if you're wondering how many calories I ate or how much protein, watch part 1 after this video. But the short answer is this: I don't count. I eat until I'm satisfied. And I don't believe in protein per pound. Alright, very soon the weight loss stall broke and the scale started moving again. By day 80 of my transformation, 31st of May 2024, I finally reached my original goal of 154 pounds or 70 kilograms. That's roughly 22% body fat, give or take. Earlier I said I used to think I would be shredded at 154 pounds, but I was way off. We often underestimate how much we should lose to get that shredded look. That's actually why I later created my automated weight tracker to have a much more accurate estimate. Now, did I get any negative side effects from going keto while still doing OMAD? Honestly, none. And because I eased my way into keto, I didn't really suffer through the adaptation period. Maybe just a bit of discomfort in the first week. Before continuing to the rest of the journey, I need to point this out. My consistency with keto and OMAD was exceptional, but it wasn't 100%. I had what I call detours, but they were rare. Maybe 5 times in total in the first 6 months, and none in the first 30 days, and only 1 in the first 60. And overall, they didn't change the outcome because I was in control now, not food. After I hit 154 pounds or 70 kilograms, I moved my goalpost. My new target now was 10% body fat, something I hadn't seen in over a decade. With fasting combined with keto, the weight was dropping, slowly but steadily, and I was more confident than ever that I could get to 10% body fat soon. By the end of June, about 3.5 months in, I was down to 145.5 pounds or 66 kilograms at around 17% body fat. And that's when I started seeing my abs in the mirror for the first time. That supercharged my motivation. This was clearly working. I even had to buy new clothes. My old ones were too loose now. By mid-September 2024, 6 months in, I had reached 137.5 pounds or 62 kilograms. That was a total loss of 40 pounds or 18 kilograms, with my body fat around 14%, literally cutting my body fat in half. I did lose some muscle too because I wasn't training, but not as much as you would expect, and I believe fasting helped with that. When you pair fasting with proper nutrition, especially highly absorbable animal-based protein, it can be pretty much muscle sparing. And one reason is that growth hormone goes up during fasting. Around this time, something amazing happened. Both my knee and my shoulder started to feel better, so I signed up for a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class. By then, fasting had become a lifestyle, so adding exercise didn't feel taxing anymore. And keto wasn't an issue either. I was fully fat adapted, running mostly on fat for fuel instead of relying on glycogen all the time. My class was at 5 p.m., about 3 hours before my meal, and after roughly 20 hours without eating. In the beginning, I felt a bit dizzy, but a 0-calorie electrolyte mix fixed that quickly. A few weeks later, I was fully adapted to training fasted and on keto, and I didn't feel the need for electrolytes anymore. After a period of not training, I built muscle pretty fast, which is because of muscle memory. I started to really like how I was beginning to look. I was approaching the exceptional physique territory. By the end of October, my weight hadn't changed, but I could clearly see I had gained muscle and lost fat. My waist had shrunk. At that point, about 7.5 months into my journey, I estimate I was at around 13% body fat, very close to that 10% goal. Victory was near. Fast forward to mid-December, 9 months into my transformation. I finally hit my lifetime goal of 10% body fat. I was 132 pounds, 60 kilograms, and I had gained even more muscle. Around that time, I quit Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and started working out at home. I wanted to put more focus on building muscle. My goal had shifted now. I was chasing that aesthetic physique. Without going too deep into that, here's a short version of what I did for training. A lot of push-ups and pull-ups plus light dumbbell work, usually 10 to 20 pounds or 5 to 10 kilograms depending on the movement. And I always did proper warm-ups and cool-downs. I trained fasted and the timing was after coming home from work, usually from 6 to 7 p.m. 3 times a week. My left shoulder was still painful but manageable, so I modified everything to work around it. I didn't train to failure. I focused on clean form and progressive overload. I also added running and cycling to the mix, especially on the weekends. I'll put a link to my spin bike below in the description. I'll make a separate video just on training, because otherwise this one will get way too long. But here's the important lesson I learned. I need to share it with you now. When you add more resistance training, hunger usually goes up. And for a lot of people it goes up more than with cardio. Muscle is metabolically active. The more muscle you put on, the more fuel your body wants. So keep that in mind. If your main goal is fat loss, going heavy on weights too early can actually throw you off. That's why with my clients, I don't put too much emphasis on weight training at the very start of their fat loss journey. Same thing happened to me. As soon as I added more training, my hunger doubled. And for the first time in my transformation, I really started craving sweets. So I used a little trick. I stayed on keto and OMAD, but I added homemade keto desserts. Things such as ice cream, shakes, chocolates, flavored yogurt, and stuff like that. I even started adding milk froth and allulose sweetener to my coffee. It's worth mentioning that I was drinking alcohol way less than before. It was down to about once a month. It all worked perfectly for me. My weight stayed more or less the same for about 2 months, but my waist kept shrinking, which told me I was actually losing fat while gaining muscle. Now let me share what I learned about weight loss plateaus, which is very important. Not losing weight for a while after a period of losing weight can actually be a good thing. Sometimes your body uses that phase to recover, adapt, and rebalance the hormones. Think of it as a readjustment phase, not a lack of progress. It's your resting period. You can't push aggressively all the time. If you do, you'll eventually lose energy and motivation. Also, weight can stay the same while fat keeps dropping, especially when you start training and gain a bit of muscle. And with fasting and keto, the early drop is pretty much glycogen and water. So the later, slower loss doesn't automatically mean you're burning less fat. One more thing, even if you tighten the diet and increase activity, the scale often doesn't move right away. That's metabolic adaptation. Your body resists until it surrenders. and then you'll often see a sharp decline in your weight. So don't get discouraged just because it's not fast. Age and genetics affect the pace, but consistency wins every single time. I'll go deeper on this in a separate video. Back to the rest of the story. In late February 2025, about 2 weeks short of the 12-month mark, something happened that completely changed the course of my life. And it wasn't about weight loss at all. I got fired from my 9-to-5 corporate job. For a long time, I was criticized there for living differently. I was constantly told I needed to eat more to work more. And anytime I did work more, the answer was always the same. You have to eat more to keep this up. In the end, they told me I didn't fit the company culture and was pushed to resign. Technically, I could have gone the legal route. Workplace laws were on my side, but I chose not to. I didn't want to spend my energy on that. I wanted to put it somewhere else. And here's the wild part. The same day I was fired or forced out, I started this channel and recorded my first video. The story of the channel is a whole different topic, and I can't get into it here. I have an old video about it. A few weeks after starting the channel, I quit alcohol altogether, and it wasn't something I forced. It happened naturally and organically. Just stopped wanting it. I didn't need to get intoxicated anymore. It wasn't adding anything to my life. It was only stealing my energy the next day. Back to the fat loss journey, down to 6% and below. Quick disclaimer. Getting well below 10%, say 6 to 8% stage lean, is impressive, but it's usually not sustainable for more than a short stretch, especially if you're over 40 and natural. For me, 10% is a sweet spot. My energy feels best, my testosterone feels highest, fasting is easy, and hunger doesn't bother me at all. And honestly, I look great in a t-shirt. And the best part is, if I ever want to get super lean again, it's only a matter of a few weeks, which I'm actually doing right now for the channel's first birthday. Anyway, by mid-March, exactly 12 months into my journey, I was down to 129.5 pounds or 58.5 kilograms, and I estimate I was at around 9% body fat. Then, from March to May, I decided to cut even further. I wanted to see what was possible, to get into the best shape of my life. I wanted an elite physique. Since I was already doing keto and OMAD, and I was physically active, I took it one step further and switched to carnivore. I went basically zero carb. I cut out dairy, nuts, and vegetables, except for onions, garlic, and limes for vitamin C, and also to increase testosterone. What I ate was beef, lamb, chicken, eggs, fish, and pork. My version of carnivore was moderate to high fat. In 45 days, by the end of April 2025, my weight dropped from 129.5 pounds or 58.5 kilograms to 127 pounds or 57.5 kilograms. I was down to roughly 6% body fat, the leanest, most shredded I have ever looked in my life. And I did it in my 40s. What was once a dream became my reality. That meant I had lost in total about 50 pounds in 14 months, roughly 30% of my body's total weight. To put that into perspective, imagine taking the equivalent of two 25-pound dumbbells, about 12.5 kilograms each, and pulling that much grease off your body. It is satisfying. I was so light, I felt I could fly. Running and jumping felt effortless. Even climbing stairs felt easier than walking on flat ground used to feel like when I was overweight. I had finally achieved the goal. I was the leanest I had been since I was a teenager. I was stronger than in my 20s, and I felt young again. By the end of April, something else happened too. I started coaching others to lose weight and gain muscle and regain their health using the same foundations of fasting, simple nutrition, and simple training. And I'm going to share what I learned from that experience very soon, because I saw things firsthand that I didn't fully understand when it was just me. I saw the traps that kept people stuck and addicted to food. It made me realize that for most people, weight loss is mostly emotional and only partly physical. I also learned that different bodies respond differently to nutrition and fasting. I learned how vegans can still lose weight and build muscle. And I learned that coaching isn't one size fits all. Some people need a push, some people need accountability more than anything, and some people need a pull, not pressure. And I learned about setbacks, because here's the thing, setbacks aren't random, they're predictable. And once you understand what causes them, you can build a system that stops them from happening in the first place. I dedicated one chapter of my book to that. Anyway, back to my own journey after reaching the pinnacle of leanness. This time, instead of pushing for further fat loss, I deliberately gained a little back to settle closer to 10% body fat, and I focused on heavier weights. My goal shifted again. Now I wanted to have one of the best physiques among over 40 natural creators on YouTube. What else did I get from this journey? My hair loss reversed, and some of the graying reversed too. My skin cleared up, and hormonally, I felt like I had gone back to my early 20s. I had energy again, and I was excited about life again. My toothache and gum pain were gone. My jawline was more chiseled than ever. And surprisingly, I didn't end up with much loose skin, most probably because of the combination of fasting, which boosts autophagy, plus no sugar, so less glycation, and lots of collagen that comes from animal-based diets. My injuries healed. My chronic stress and anxiety dropped significantly. My sleep improved, and that was just the start. This whole experience was like a university. I learned a lot along the way, but the biggest lesson I took was this. You can achieve anything if you truly set your mind to it. I learned that determination comes first and knowledge comes second. Every time I look back on this journey, it reminds me why I started and why I can never go back. It has become a source of motivation in every part of my life. Not just staying in shape, but constantly pushing myself to become better in all areas of my life. But even that wasn't the best reward. The ultimate prize I got was getting my self-esteem back. There's still so much I want to share, but part 2 ended up longer than I expected to, even longer than part 1. So let's cover the rest in part 3. I'll take you through the rest of my journey up to February 2026, including why I changed my mind and pushed down to 5% body fat, although for a short period of time, in September 2025. I'll also share what happened to my injury, how it flared up and how I healed it, along with the best exercises and the supplements in detail, especially the ones that helped me the most with skin, hair loss and graying. I'll talk about what I learned from longer fasts, why my training shifted over time, and how I estimate my body fat. I'll also answer your questions, so drop them in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share, and hit the bell so you'll know when the next one is up. And stay tuned for the giveaway. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.